Hey everyone, I'm Jennifer Woods, and today I will be talking about Seventh Heaven and that sneaky little Camden family. If you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel so that you can keep tabs on my comings and goings, as though you were Annie or the Reverend Camden, spying on your children, trying to find out what mischief they're up to now. This week, I will be discussing the 10th season episode, Apple Pie, because it will get you in that holiday spirit. You know what spirit I'm talking about. The one where you just want to get into fights with your loved ones, stick your nose into business that doesn't concern you, and then, when you get caught, say, "Hey, you're my family, it's the holiday season, and I love you." If you can relate, then this episode is one you will not want to miss. For some context, this is the season where good boy Martin, who lived with the Camdens in season 8 and 9 while his father was in Iraq, finds out he knocked up a young woman named Sandy, played by the other Duff sister Haylie, during a college visit with Simon and Simon's girlfriend Rose in an off-camera encounter that happened over the summer break. Martin was inexperienced before this one-off encounter, and he is devastated to find out his one and only time with a woman led to a pregnancy. He ignores her calls, tells her quite candidly that he washes his hands of this, thank you very much. This was the boy who allegedly felt very strongly about doing the right thing and waiting until marriage in the previous season, so right off, this is incredibly out of character. But whatever. They needed a plot line to hold the viewer's attention for what was supposed to be the final season, so I get it. Also, Ruthie had a crush on an older boy named Jack. Simon's family hates his fiancée Rose because, let's be honest, there's little to like about this chick. And Lucy and Kevin are dealing with day-to-day marital issues as they raise their baby girl Savannah. Now that you're caught up, let's dive into this episode, shall we? In the first scene, senior boy Jack approaches Ruthie in the hallway at school. He's like, "Hey, how was your Thanksgiving?" She's like, "Hey, why did you think I was having Martin's baby?" I forgot to mention that there was a rumor going around school earlier that Ruthie was the girl Martin had knocked up because they're good friends, and as we find out in this season, she has a monster crush on him. I'd buy the rumors too. Anyway, it's just more of what we'd expect on Seventh Heaven. Lots of gossip going around, characters pretending to be hurt by the insinuations when, let's be honest, having Martin's baby is probably Ruthie's ultimate dream right now. She's got to be at least a little flattered that people thought it was a possibility. Jack apologizes for misjudging her and giving her far too much credit as a potential love interest of Martin's, and thanks her for helping him with his Campbell soup drive thing they used to do back in the day. Do they still do that? I don't know. I don't really concern myself with the day-to-day lives of children anymore. Jack is interested in dating young Ruthie, but Ruthie has heard that Martin has some stories to tell about this older guy who's actually the same age as Martin, by the way. And she'd like to talk with Martin and clear it with him first before she makes any decisions about who she will be dating going forward. I thought she'd learned a valuable lesson already, that gossip is unreliable, and I have little doubt Martin is just the bearer of more gossip. But whatever. Ruthie returns home to find Simon sleeping on the couch. His explanation for why he didn't come to pick her up and instead left her to ride the bus like some mere peasant is unnecessarily long and convoluted. He's on break from college, but it's not much of a break because he has to work tomorrow, and boo-hoo, why is he telling her all this? Doesn't she already know the whole sad story? He finally admits that he didn't pick her up because he's lazy. Ruthie asks Simon what Martin's deal is because that's how the Camdens get their information in this series, from asking around, speaking to everyone but the person who could actually give them the facts they are looking for. Simon says he's heard tell that Jack likes his conquests young and innocent so that he can have his way with them and leave them high and dry. You know the song Hit the Road, Jack? It's like that, only in reverse, where it's Jack who's telling you to pound sand. This story he's giving her sounds uncannily like the plot line of Cruel Intentions. Are we sure Simon wasn't just watching that movie a few minutes earlier and that's the real reason why he fell asleep? Simon thought Ruthie was aware of all of this and was just trying to entrap him. But no, Ruthie had no idea and she is horrified. Ruthie is now making up a plate of those home-cooked classics, chicken, veggies, mashed potatoes, as she puts the leftovers in the fridge. Her dad walks through the back door as she's saran wrapping the plate, but Ruthie just acts like being alone with this man is perfectly safe, if not mildly annoying, as she brings his plate of food and a fork to the dinner table for him, serving him the way a wife might. She sits down across from him and they have a talk about Jack. Dad says he wanted to stay out of the whole affair. A likely story. Has this guy ever stayed out of any business concerning his children? She admits that she hasn't talked to Martin yet. She'd rather talk to everyone else first. And Dad's like, maybe talk to Martin. Then you can talk to me. So that I can stay out of it, of course. She tells her dad Jack wants to talk to him too. As she's heading upstairs, he calls out to her back, "Hey, where's my dessert?" Now, Simon is talking on the phone with Rose. He claims this is his last night home, but I thought he had a long break ahead of him. I thought he was going to be home until January. Was that all just part of this convoluted lie meant to confuse Ruthie earlier? Rose is spending time with Sandy, so she can't hang out with his needy self. She says her parents will be skiing in Canada during the holidays, so he won't be meeting them after all. Bummer. Remember what I said in my Mother May I Sleep with Danger review? Anyone who won't let you meet their parents, either because they're skiing in Canada or because they died during an unfortunate skiing accident, is clearly hiding something. I get the feeling Rose is setting the stage for such an accident in the near future. Could it be? The call between Rose and Simon ends, and there is a knock at the door. Rose opens the door, and there is a man standing on the other side who looks old enough to be her dad, but could possibly be a much older secret lover. The twists here are giving me whiplash. There's some talk between Simon and the dad about Ruthie and Jack, and then the dad starts asking about dessert again and finds out there's leftover pie at Lucy's place. If you're not familiar with the 10th season, Lucy lives right nearby, like in a house practically in their backyard. And so the apple pie saga begins. The dad calls Lucy and gets Sandy on the phone. He says he isn't really interested in speaking to Lucy. Lucy knows right away that her dad's probably calling about the pie. Sandy says she'll have his daughter bring the last piece over, but Lucy asks Sandy if she'll go ahead and do it for her. That's right, make the pregnant woman do it. While bringing the pie over to the Camden house, Sandy runs into Martin in the backyard. Let's just say he's not too happy to see her. They share an awkward greeting. She asks him to give Rev Camden the pie since he's going over there anyway, and then, in an effort to be pleasant, she tells him she hopes he has a Merry Christmas. He's like, yeah, and continues on his way to the back door of the Camden house. Sandy is crushed. It's tough being the other Duff sister, I guess. Turns out Martin was coming over to talk to Ruthie because she's been giving him the silent treatment for the past week, and he wants to know what's up with that. She says she's mad because he let her on. He says that's not true. She's just jealous of Sandy. She orders him to tell her that he knew she liked him because it will make her feel like less of a fool. He finally agrees and says he knew. But she's not satisfied. Guess it doesn't feel so hot to have someone tell you something you know is a lie and that they're only saying to humor you. Also, never take a woman at her word. She said it would make her feel better, and it didn't. I'm not quite sure why she would think he would be leading her on. What does he get out of that? A week's worth of the silent treatment, it looks like. There's a knock at the door, and Martin has this realization of, wait a minute. He understands now that Ruthie wasn't expecting him to stop by, but apparently she was expecting someone else. I'm not sure how he comes to this conclusion that she was waiting for someone else other than the fact that someone is clearly knocking at the door right now. But if that's what he's all confused about, why not just say, who the heck is that knocking at your door? Why do these people talk in such cryptic circles? Turns out it's Jack on the other side of the door. He and Martin have this confrontation where Martin tells him that the reason why he thinks Jack is bad for Ruthie is because he knew that Jack made some kind of pass at Meredith, who, by the way, was Martin's girlfriend at one point and was recently adopted by both Martin and Simon's ex-girlfriend. But it's a long story, and don't ask. So yeah, Meredith also dated Jack for a minute before she dated Martin. Jack is like, I thought Meredith wanted me to make a pass, but when I realized she didn't, I let it go. I'm a good guy. And Martin is like, well, what about Becky and Debbie and Mara? I'm waiting for him to mention Sandra, Mary, Jessica, Monica, and Rita. Not to mention, what high schooler is named Debbie in 2005? No offense, not saying it's a bad name, I've just never heard of anyone younger than like 50 with that name. Does Jack have some after-school job cleaning pools for lonely housewives or something? Jack says all of these girls were not lily white, and oh, by the way, Debbie dumped him, probably because she wasn't ready yet to break up her marriage to her billionaire husband. But moving on. Ruthie's just sitting this one out, observing the drama unfold in front of her. Meanwhile, the Rev is creeping down the hallway toward them, wanting so desperately to grab that lone piece of pie sitting there on the counter, but not daring to disturb the soap opera going on in his kitchen. This Martin kid would make a horrible journalist. He really needs to get his facts straight. Jack is not a womanizer at all. Yes, he's been dating nice girls because who doesn't want to date a nice girl? Like, duh. Upstairs, Dad is the master of manipulation as he tries to talk his young twins into going into the kitchen to get that last piece of pie for him. Of course, he makes this seem like it's a completely innocent request, but we know he's up to something. Poor kids. They have no idea why Daddy wants them to do this thing. Does he want them to get a fork too? No need for that, he says. I'm sure they're totally confused by this point. Annie walks in on the conversation. She wants Daddy to talk to Simon about Rose, and oh yeah, he could get his own freaking pie. So now he's set his sights on Simon, who's just walked through the front door. Simon's like, no deal, get your own freaking pie. Apparently the Reverend's not too keen on talking to this Jack fellow, and yet he's a pastor who's spent his whole career counseling people. Sandy is crying to Lucy and Kevin because Martin was mean to her. This is the first time I've ever seen someone have a nervous breakdown on someone's couch because a young man she likes didn't wish her a Merry Christmas. I'm sure this happens all the time in real life, so it's nice to see this kind of representation on the small screen. Lucy makes excuses for Martin. She's clearly in bed with him. Kevin wants to go WWE on his ace. Sandy feels the same. I can't say I'm an expert on the laws in California, but I do think it's kind of suspect that this woman in her early 20s got knocked up by a high school boy who I'm pretty sure was 17 at the time, since from an earlier episode, it sounds like Martin's birthday might be around September, just like actor Tyler Hoechlin's. And this encounter happened in June, so yeah, I'm not really feeling very sorry for Sandy right now, and kind of think she should just suck it up and move on. Simon calls up Sandy and finds out Rose was lying when she said she wanted to spend the evening with her instead of her boyfriend. So, who is Rose with if not Sandy? Dad warns Simon not to give in to his Camden ways and go stalking Rose. It's not a good look. Kevin confronts Martin and World War III breaks out. Kevin threatens to punch him. Martin basically says, go ahead, see how that works out for you. The dad makes a move to get the piece of pie on the counter and then changes his mind and decides to just go ahead and tell Jack he's sorry for underestimating him. He heard the whole earlier conversation with Martin. Apparently he's choosing an apology over apple pie. That's character growth for you. Every story arc needs a little of that, and here's his. Dad still thinks 18 is too old for 16. Yet what about Sandy and Martin? Does he have any thoughts on 17 and 21? Kevin seems to. He and Martin are outside wrestling like this is a scene on the Discovery Channel or something. And all because Kevin thinks 21-year-old experienced Sandy was taken in by the smooth charm of a virginal 17-year-old. Let's be real. She probably got him drunk. I see no other possible explanation for their encounter. He turned down Segs with his own girlfriend, played by David Cassidy's daughter in season 9, and yet he just fell into bed with the other Duff sister during a post-pizza campus tour? I don't think so. After their little wrestling match, Kevin is feeling a ton of remorse because I'm pretty sure a grown cop putting an 18-year-old boy in a legal chokehold, as Martin calls it, is not a good look. Kevin does give Martin a fatherly lecture and basically sounds like he ripped off a Rolling Stones song. You can't always get what you want, but apparently a baby at 17 with a 21-year-old who clearly drugged him is exactly what he needs right now. Martin and Kevin decide to blame a little too much holiday spirit for their fight. By the way, Lucy doesn't buy that excuse. The Reverend is listening in as Ruthie and Jack say goodbye in the front hallway. He asks Ruthie after why there was no goodnight kiss. This family has a serious lack of boundaries, and it certainly doesn't help that the Reverend is played by disgraced actor Stephen Collins. Everything is just taking on a whole new meaning now. So apparently the man with Rose looks old enough to be her father because he actually is her father. Did anyone else see that coming? Well, I did see him credited as her father in the Amazon Prime X-ray section earlier, so yeah, I'm pretty sure we all saw that coming. Rose is sad because her dad will be selling a house she loves now that he's getting divorced from his fourth wife. Rose doesn't want Simon to know that her parents are divorced, but I'm sure he'll understand why she hid that from him when he eventually does find out. He's a pastor's kid after all. The father finally has his apple pie right there in front of him, but he can't eat it yet because, as it turns out, he's waiting for Annie to join him on the couch and eat it with him. Turns out this whole apple pie saga was a metaphor and a lesson for Simon on the dangers of wanting something so badly that you'll do anything to get it. Dad and Mom think Rose wants Simon, and that means she's crazy, so watch out. I have to say that I agree with them on that. Not sure why Simon needed this little parable of the pie to get that point across, but whatever. Rose finally comes clean to Simon. Simon sees her anxiety over a lie she told him as a good sign and proof he can trust her. Dad's not too sure. Maybe Annie needs to bake some more pie. This could be a long holiday season. Martin apologizes to Lucy for getting into that fight with Kevin and being rude to Sandy. Maybe this apology will eventually find its way back to its sources through the Camden grapevine. But no, Lucy tells him to call up Sandy and tell her this himself. So he does. He wishes Sandy a Merry Christmas, and it's nice, but then he goes to ruin the moment by telling her that he still doesn't want this baby. And she realizes that Martin is the pie she never really wanted. Jack is the pie as well. Old, wrinkly pie crust. And Ruthie doesn't want him anymore. I want to remind her, though, that Martin is also 18. Is he too old for her as well? I'm sure we'll find out as the season progresses. Now that Ruthie doesn't want Jack anymore, he admits that, yeah, he's been getting around. Oh well, what do you expect? He's an 18-year-old boy. Who talks like a 50-year-old man, by the way, and is probably getting it on with a 50-year-old woman in her pool house. So Dad was right after all, and the episode ends with a mushy message about holiday togetherness.